Travels of the Ellis Arbor is an audio narrative set in the world of Bastion using 5e compatible characters. Tune in for episode 25, Stones. It took little over a day to prepare for their journey through the Hemvala paths. Little did the crew realize just how underprepared they would be for the journey and what they would encounter. Their brash determination and want for gold may yet be their undoing. Thankfully, Aracria was generous enough to provide a stipend for their expenses. 200 gold pieces would have to cover supplies, tools, and equipment. Enough for them to return from their wayward journey. A precarious investment to be certain, though Darian alone seemed a more than worthy benefactor. They bought a myriad of equipment, enough to travel the roads under the cover of night, sleep if they must, eat when they were hungry, and nurse their wounds should they require it. It had come to Carpathian's attention, while harrying a lowly group of travelers, that the paths were home to a young clutch of basilisks. Nothing to fret over or hire mercenaries to dispatch, but enough that they required some protection from petrification. Pointing them in the direction of a local cellar, they purchased one enchanted silver rod each. They were told that the enchantment acted like a magical puncture, siphoning any transmutative energies from a creature and returning them to their original self. A necessary purchase, but one that left them with only 20 gold pieces remaining. Having made do with less, they turned a gold piece into another night's lodging and several portions of tavern stew. It would have to suffice for the journey ahead. Needless to say, their investment became a requirement for staving off the dangers to come. To be certain, their destination was little under an hour's walk, due west from the pathway that led from the parish. It was littered with all kinds of iridescent flora, glowing under the dry season's sun. And as if to punctuate this glowing image, the deposit itself sat on the edge of a ravine, long since dried up from the scorching heat. From what they'd seen, Verd Ethereum had a dull, chalky facade to it. However, under the permanent gaze of the vagrant sun, it glowed with a wholly brilliant light, milky and warbling between moss and lime hues. Against this beauty, however, another foul thing awaited them. Instead of the young clutch they were promised, a great, hulking monstrosity sat curled in a nook of its own creation, chewing on the stony remains of some hapless traveler. Thick, bristling spines and sand-colored hide, a much larger creature awaited them. Turning on its front legs, it reared back at their approach. Vacant eyes glanced in all directions, blind to all but its prey. Each member of the crew shielded themselves from its gaze as a greater basilisk screeched like a carrion over its next meal. Springing to action, the alacrity of the crew was impressive. Dancing between obstacles and terrain, Darian fired shot after shot at the beast's face, hoping to give some necessary cover to his companions. Edward took cover on a nearby ledge, hoping to play into his long-range advantage. He fired round after round of white, hot projectiles, shearing the spines from the basilisk's body. Muttering under his breath, Nout conjured a powerful enchantment that obscured the area in a magical fog. He hoped to give the party a kind of cover to steal the gemstones from underneath the nose of the creature. Carpathian, of course, cared little for the theatrics. Marching toward the creature's form, he brought his hood up to cover his eyes and sent a freezing ray over the entire area. In a second, the basilisk's eyes were frozen over, and it could do little to free itself of such a blight. However eyeless it became, its dangerous, tormented throes seemed to make it all the more deadly. Reacting to its blind assault, Carpathian vaulted to the side, stepping through a misty portal to avoid its attack. And breathing a heavy sigh, the basilisk exhaled a cloud of murky steam, freezing everything it touched. It appeared that this monstrosity had more tools than the crew had thus encountered. And joining the fray, more clutched their hands close to their chest and grew to 3 times their size. Barreling toward the creature, he swung his club-like arms, hoping to throw it off balance. But Moore's form was not quick enough to avoid the petrifying vapors. Stuck firm in place, Moore cried in a fearsome rage as they were frozen from the waist down. And crying in defiance, Edward leapt over his ledge to try and distract the creature from its prey. Needless to say, the crew looked in horror as the basilisk's head snapped in Edward's direction. Another deep sigh and a shrill scream as the basilisk exhaled another cloud of murky, silvery smoke, directly over Ed's form. Darian shouted, climbing over his barricade and running headlong to meet the creature. And tapping his hammer, he summoned a ferocious wind that scattered the petrifying smoke, enough to make a clear path to the beast. And tapping it once more, speaking loudly in a dark tongue, his form glowed for an instant, sending him hurtling toward the beast at unearthly speed. With one swift movement, he brought the sanguinary gavel upon the basilisk's head, showering razor-sharp teeth across the stone. It grumbled and cursed in its abyssal tongue, ready to rear its head toward the captain, its next victim. Thankfully, no more clouds of petrifying steam came. Carpathian took this moment to slip in behind the creature's forelegs. He placed the end of his staff between its broken scales and muttered a curse from his lips. Instantly, the basilisk vanished as it was banished to some other plane. The wind and the sounds of battle grew silent as the crew met their fate of the combat. Heaving a sigh, Moore returned to their smaller form, instantly dissipating the petrifying effect, and scrambled toward the stony form of their young friend, as did the rest of the crew. They gathered toward the still form of Ed, whose gun was outstretched, ready to fire into the open jaws of the creature. The shot never left his rifle. And with a sharp, cutting tone, Darian turned to Nout.
Quick, don't waste time. Hand me one of those silver needles. We need to bring him back.
Nout immediately set about searching through his bag, tearing through the lining in order to find the needles in question. So large and so full was his collection of baubles, it would take a moment to find the right remedy. Carpathian cut in, as if to punctuate the need for swiftness.
Best not take your time, Nout. It's altogether likely that this thing will return from its banishment. We need Edward back before then. You have about 10 seconds.
Tension continued to build for a moment longer as Nout fumbled for the first silver needle. Edward, however, was not going to wait so long to be freed. A vibrant red light shone from Edward's petrified form, followed by a hollow growl of rage. In a shower of cracked shale, Ed's light pulsed once again and revealed a perfectly regular and unpetrified version of himself. The voice that followed was anything but his own.
For God's sake, do you pirates know the first thing about slaying beasts? I'm not likely to lose this avatar by the mindless rage of a basilisk. Who do you think I am?
This raucous onslaught of insults shocked the crew. A red light shone through Ed's goggles, and the crew looked on in disbelief at the sudden change in Ed's demeanor. Enough to break Carpathian's concentration, returning the basilisk to the material realm. A flash of arcane light, and the creature returned to its frenzied, dispassionate writhing.
Come now, foul beast. That's more than enough from you. If you'd be so kind as to perish.
and with a grace only matched by Darian's own machismo, Ed sauntered toward the confused creature and placed his palm over its frozen eyes. A heat burned from his form as he clutched the beast's flesh tightly.
Burn.
Only a moment more, and the basilisk's form became a thick, burned charcoal, scattering to winds like black pitch or the rising vents of a burning fireplace. The breeze picked up and carried the black, lifeless ash to the clouds. A quiet, venomous smile crept over Edward's face as he turned toward the perplexed crew.
I think it best we discuss the terms of this little quest you've taken. I suggest you listen to what I have to say. That woman will be the end of all of you.
Travels of the Ellis Arbor is made possible by the generous support of our subscribers, followers, and most notably, our patrons. Thanks to all our Moon, Wedge, Crown, and Hex tier patrons for supporting us so far on this journey. Please subscribe, give a like or a comment, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned for the next episode. Make sure to follow us here on YouTube, on Spotify, and on twitch.tv/lonomy. Don't forget, take care of each other.